Okay, I don't have trivia today, but I do have some questions to start us off as we think about the Israelites going into the wilderness, going on a bit of a trip, thinking about how you prepare for a trip. By raising your hands, I'll have you answer. Do you pack the day of leaving for that trip, the night before, or start packing the week before? So, who are my week before people? Okay. What about the night before? Yeah, a lot more. Anybody pack the day of? Okay. Braverism. Okay, this is the next one. Do you use a written list, a mental list, or do you just wing it? So who are my mental list people? Okay, a written list. I'm very much a written list person. Or how many of you just wing it? Now, how many of those who wing it are also pack the day of people? Okay, and now, this is one question for everybody. How many of you have ever forgotten something when you've packed for a trip? Okay, so even those of us with lists forget things sometimes. Well, as the scholar Pete Enns says in his very sarcastic kind of way, the Israelites left Egypt toting gold, silver, and other fineries, but no one seemed to think about basic survival. But once again, we have a story where God comes to the rescue. But as God often does, God includes a bit of a mystery. In response to Israel's lack of planning for food and water, God provides this substance, bread, manna. Manna literally meaning, what is it? It also is something that is strange because it seems to have a roving best before date. Most of the time, it's good the day of. Except on Sundays, those carry over from the day before. So we've got a little bit longer to enjoy. And apparently there was some that was kept for the Ark of the Covenant that would just last forever. Never expiring bread. That is not the case on my kitchen counter. Now, ultimately, it is some kind of bread, but it's not just ordinary bread. This is bread that tastes like it's made with honey, because God is extra like that. Now, this isn't the only time that bread shows up in the early parts of the Bible. It actually shows up quite a few times. As you'll see on the screen, it shows up in Genesis 3:19, where it says, "By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, and to that I say, don't threaten me with a good time." It also comes up in Genesis 14:18, 18:5, and 19:3, and bread is offered as a piece of hospitality. Bread was part of both the meals that Jacob used to deceive his family, and it was bread that lured the Israelites into Egypt in the time of famine. Moses was invited to break bread with the family whose daughters he rescued, later marrying one of them. And they ate unleavened bread at the Exodus, just as many Jewish folks do today as they celebrate the Passover. And of course, there are many more references in Scripture. Some counts put it up to 300 references to bread. Bread is something that is very ordinary. It shows up at many meals. And yet, it's also extraordinary when we find it in Scripture. In a way, God says yes and to what the people need. God responds to the physical needs of the people in providing the sustenance they need. They were wandering in the wilderness without bread or water, and God provided. But God also provides spiritual and social realities and teachings in these moments. Spiritually, there's a spiritual formation that comes with this manna that shows up, their daily bread, as we prayed earlier. It is the food that shows up without work, relying on God's providence. And it is a food that requires trust because it won't last till the next day, asterisk, except for when it does. But there's also a social dynamic going on here. People were sent out to get enough for their family, but only enough. Those who had taken too much would find that it would go bad. But somehow there was always enough for everyone. There's a lesson in here about how to orient our communities towards making sure that no one is hoarding, but that all have what they need, so that no one becomes too powerful. No one becomes slaves and masters. As we speak of peace, and seek it, I suppose, we realize, I think, that peace is not just something out there for us to go and get, but peace is a discipline. Trusting in God's providence doesn't just happen. We need stories like this one and experiences in our own lives to teach us this. But we also need to be conscious of others. And maybe you're tired of hearing me say this, talking about how we need to care for the marginalized, think of the poor. And to be honest, sometimes I'm getting tired of saying it. But I think these messages are important because they stand in contrast to a lot of the messages we receive in our world around us. Just this week and the week before, seeing all the outrage around who will perform at the Super Bowl, and no outrage at the violence and death all around us, perpetrated by those who are said to protect us. That kind of message is the one we have to continually oppose. Because if we don't, we will never be able to imagine a different world. And not even just imagine, to live a different world. I think one of the reasons the church exists is to not only help us to imagine a different way of being, but to show the world what it's like to live differently so that they can imagine it too. Our imaginations are stunted by ways of the world that say that we should hoard our resources and power just for ourselves, that we should fear those who live, love, and look differently than ourselves, that empathy and compassion are weakness, and that strength is shown in how cruel you can be. None of this is true, and none of this is godly. And so we try to live differently, because that's the only real way I think we will find peace, is if we can imagine a world that is different and live into that imagination. Jesus continues this bread, not only in the prayer of giving our daily bread, but in one of the last moments of his earthly life. He gathers his disciples and says, "I am the bread of life." Earlier on, he said, "I am living water." These two pieces that are integral to life that we saw in this Exodus story show up again in the life of Jesus. These are concrete things, but they are also symbols of the essentials that are needed to find peace. Jesus, I think, is one of those essentials as well. Jesus, who set out to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Not condemnation, but favor. It is in Jesus that we experience, in I think the most holistic way, the grace of God that is essential to our flourishing and to our life, just as bread is essential to our bodies. So Jesus sets a table. It's not a lavish table, but an ordinary one. Jesus breaks bread and raises a cup. We do this in remembrance, not just of the Jesus that makes us feel warm and cozy. We do this in remembrance of the Jesus who cared for the lowly, who reached out to those who had been pushed out and sought justice for the oppressed. Today is World Communion Sunday, which means that there are churches throughout the world who are doing communion today. Now, some traditions have communion every Sunday, so it's not strange for them. We do communion much less frequently, but hopefully it's still not strange for us. It is something that draws us in. I think the active movement and tasting and smelling of the elements helps to bring us into a different place. There is a mystery around communion. We are enacting it today alongside others throughout the world. And as we approach this table in this room, in some mysterious way, we are all approaching the same table. All the people of the world today. Also, all the people of the world who have lived before us, all that will live after. There is this kind of folding of space and time into this one special moment where we take these ordinary elements and they become something extraordinary. Now, I'm not going to weigh in on the debate of whether they're transforming or really present in the elements, that Jesus is there. But I know that in the community gathered, we see Jesus. But this is a bit of a different table than maybe we experience here, because as I said, it's drawing people in from around the world. We are sitting at a table with the first followers of Jesus, Jesus' own disciples. We are sitting at a table with those that are much like ourselves and those who are very different. We are at a table with those who live, look, and love differently than us, and those that live, love, and look the same as us. We are at a table with whom we love and those with whom we hate. We are at a table with those who would recognize our faith and cheer us on, and those who may even deny our faith because we don't have the faith that they have. But we do this in a recognition that this is God's table, not our table. We don't control who gets to come here. And because in God's eyes we are all children of God, beloved beyond compare, and embraced without exception, and invited without inequity, all are welcome at this table. And I'll be honest, sometimes I hate that. I'm sometimes like that Jonah pouting under a tree, not wanting to see those who embody bigotry, racism, sexism, and all forms of abuse at that table with me. I don't want that. And while we do well to protect ourselves and the vulnerable from harmful behaviors, the miracle of God's peace table is that each of us is invited to come as we are, but also invited to leave transformed. And that's where I find hope. Hope for those who I don't want to see at the table with me, that maybe God can work in them too. If we are willing to open our eyes and see our loved ones and enemies alike, we can begin to imagine the healing, shalom, and peace that this world needs. So as I said, we are going to be doing this today, World Communion with one another. There will be 3 stations, one here, and one out in the foyer. You will receive there 2 cups, one with 3 kinds of bread from different parts of the world, and 1 cup with juice. You're invited, I should say, all of the bread is gluten-free, so no worries if you need it, and it even tastes good. When you approach the table, the servers will speak the words of blessing to you. I encourage you to actually take the juice and drink it right away so we can not worry about having to deal with all these little glasses everywhere. But return to your seat with the 3 breads that will be in the cup. And as you are taking those breads, think of those from around the world that may also be eating breads like these, a little bit different from our own, but also sitting at God's table with us. And if you would like to be served in your seat, I will be roving around. Just try to make eye contact with me, and I will come to you. As for the rest of you, you may approach whichever table is closest or most convenient for you. And I also want to note, because we believe that God welcomes all to the table, we practice open communion. You do not have to meet any specifications in order to participate. All are welcome to receive the grace and love of God. All are welcome to receive these elements, regardless of age, background, identity, or whatever else. All are welcome to this table to take and eat the goodness that is God.